Hello friends, welcome again. This is Dr. Kazmi and today we are going to talk about the COVID-19 situation in Pakistan. As of today, that is the 4th of June 2020, the situation in Pakistan regarding COVID-19 has deteriorated. Today in the newspaper, especially in the National Daily Dawn has reported that the number of cases in Pakistan regarding COVID-19 has surpassed the numbers of China. And as of today, the total deaths stand at 1,688, which have been attributed to COVID-19. So in this particular talk, we would be looking at some projections. We were looking at some current data and projections for the next 2 to 3 months for Pakistan. So we would be looking first at the number of deaths because of COVID-19, and then when we will be looking at the morbidity, that is the total number of infected cases and how these infected cases have been going on a day-to-day basis and how they are gonna how they're gonna spread in the coming 2 to 3 months. So we will start with discussing the deaths related to COVID-19 per day and then the total number of deaths. So if you look at these two graphs which are there in front of you, so we have the first graph which is showing the number of deaths per day, and then the graph below shows the total number of deaths so far. So in Pakistan, the number of deaths have significantly increased since mid-March and has been steadily increasing. So the number of deaths started at around 2 to 3 per day, and then it has been slowly going up. There have been dips and rises, but if we fit it on a curve, we see that there has been a steady increase in the number of deaths. So at the moment, the average number of deaths per day is standing anywhere between 60 to 80 deaths per day. And the projections are, if you look at the right side of this, you can see this pinkish area, and then we have got a red dotted line in between. So this pinkish area is actually showing you the lower and the upper ends of a normal distribution, projected normal distributions for numbers of deaths per day. So it simply tells you that at minimum you will be expecting this number of deaths in the coming few days, and the upper line actually, or the upper end of the curve, shows that this would be the maximum number of deaths which you can expect in the next 2 to 3 months, while the red dotted line is somewhat what we call as the average or the median value. So if everything remains the same, this would be the most realistic depiction of the number of deaths that we would be expecting in case of Pakistan. So if we look, there will be a steady increase in the upper range of the expected deaths per day. And if we plot this, so somewhere around start of August to end of August, we can expect the upper range to be around 200, while the lower range would be hovering. The lower range is more or less the same, so you would be expecting somewhere between 15 to 20. So what that means is in the coming few months, we can have as low as 15 to 20 deaths per day due to COVID-19 in Pakistan, while the upper range would steadily increase. So you can have probably up to 200 deaths per day in the worst case scenario in the coming few months. But on an average or a median value, it would hover around 60 to 70 deaths on maximum. It can touch around 100 deaths per day, and it would remain steady for next to 2-3 months. We would see a little bit decrease after mid-August, but that would be negligible. So you will still be getting around somewhere between 75 to 100 deaths per day. So the next 2 to 3 months are a bit gloomy in terms of mortality rate for COVID-19, because we are going to see a steady rise in the number of deaths per day due to COVID-19. Now, if we look at the total number of deaths, so from the beginning, those people who have been subtracted from the population because of COVID-19, that is gonna steadily increase. So at this point in time, we have got 1,688 deaths attributed to COVID-19. And you can see the graph is steadily increasing over the next 2 to 3 months. So we'll be having more and more deaths. And the number of deaths, total number of deaths by September 2020 would be somewhere between 9 to 10,000. So we are expecting at the moment in Pakistan, it is 1,688. For the next 2 to 3 months, it's going to jump up to 10,000 on average. But in worst case scenario, we can expect around 15 to 16,000 total deaths. While if the numbers are in our favor, if luck is on our side, then at most we would be having probably at most 4,000. That's because of COVID-19. So in a good scenario, the maximum number of deaths would be around 4,000 by September 2020. In worst case scenario, we can expect around 16,000 deaths because of COVID-19, while on average or a median value, realistically, that the total number of deaths would be somewhere around 9 to 10,000. Now, coming down to the basic reproductive rate of COVID-19 in case of Pakistan. Now, Pakistan is a warm country. So initially, the expectations that were that the R naught would be a bit low in Pakistan as compared to the worldwide recognized value of 2.2 to 2.4 in case of COVID-19. But in my previous lectures, I have always discussed this thing that R naught is a very dynamic thing. So to begin with, R naught is always high, but as there is more sort of more health education in the masses, there is more appreciation of the fact that it is spreading. People start doing some form of they start taking some form of preventive measures, and that brings the R naught down. So at the moment, Pakistan has got R naught, which is hovering a little above 1. So it still means when you have got an R naught of more than 1, it means that one person who is infected is actually on a whole infecting more than one people. So you would always get an increase. So higher the R naught, the more steeper would be the curve. In this case, because it's not very much high above 1, so that's why we are seeing a slow spread of COVID-19 in Pakistan. But we need to bring it down below 1 if we want this epidemic or pandemic to stop in case of Pakistan. Having said that, now we will be talking about the morbidity. So in other words, we'll be talking about the infected cases. So as of today, total number of infected cases in Pakistan has touched newly infected cases. I'm talking about the new infection, like these are the new number of cases, the incidence, that is 7,040 cases as of today. So the total infected rounds about comes to be 0.1% of the population. So if we look at this graph, this is showing the newly infected cases per day. So from March onward, we are seeing that the newly infected cases are steadily increasing, and we expect them to increase, especially after this partial lockdown was lifted up. And there was the Eid festive season in Pakistan as well, where we all know that people, they meet one another, they go to one another's homes, they hug one another, they sit very close to one another and talk. And that has contributed to the spread, the recent spread in the society. And that's why the number of newly infected cases has been steadily increasing, and it would further increase till it reaches a plateau somewhere around mid-July to August. And then there would be a decline, but that would be a very slow and negligible decline to begin with. But we have to see how it would translate after September 2020. Now coming to the number of currently infected cases. So this shows basically the point prevalence of COVID-19. So how many cases are currently infected at the moment. Obviously, you start with the people getting infected, but then people also recover at the same time. So this is not taking into consideration those people who had the infection and were recovered. But let's say as of today, how many people in Pakistan are actually infected at the moment? Their status is that they are COVID positive. and how that's gonna unfold in the next 2 to 3 months. So in next 2 to 3 months, again, we are going to see a huge rise in the number of infected people per day. So the point prevalence is going to increase. Again, this blue area is showing you the upper range and the lower range. So if there are good measures, then on the lower range, the number of cases would be around 40,000, 38,000. So at any given point in time, there will be 38 to 40,000 people in the next 2 to 3 months. Every day they would have their status as infected. In worst case scenario, we would be having close to 0.4 million. That translates into 0.2% of the population to be infected at any given point. So in worst case scenario, maybe the next 2 to 3 months, at any given point in time, there will be 0.2% of the population whose status would be COVID positive. While if we take the median values, then probably 0.1% of the population, that translates down to 175,000, 100 to 78,000, could be any values between that. They would be infected at any given point in time. So in other words, in very simple words, the point prevalence of COVID-19 in the coming 2 to 3 months would be around 0.1% of the population. Now, looking at the total number of infected cases. So the total number of infected cases is a cumulative figure. So it includes those people who are infected and eventually they get recovered as well. But because once they were infected, they always become in that pool. So it means that they had the disease. And again, this would steadily increase for the next 2 to 3 months because more and more people would be affected. And we think in the next 2 to 3 months, if again luck is on the Pakistani side, then maximum the number of total infected cases would remain at 0.2% of the population. While in worst case scenario, what would happen that by September 2020, 1.1% of the Pakistani population, that translates to around 2.4 million people, would have been infected. And that's a very high figure. And for a country like Pakistan, which has got lack of resources, where there is rampant poverty, there's lack of education, that can have huge consequences. But let's say on the basis of the current trends, if we take the median or the average values, then the total number of infections by end of September would be 0.6% of the population. That translates around to 1.2 million Pakistani people. So coming down in a nutshell, because of the premature lifting of the lockdowns, because of the Eid festive region, because of the highly dense populated areas, especially urban areas, and given the fact that the cultural norms in Pakistani society are that people are very close to one another and they come very close to one another. That's why the COVID-19 has been spreading, despite the fact that there is summer season, the temperatures are quite high, and the environment factor are not in favor of COVID-19 spread. But because of the cultural reason, because of the way the society interacts with one another, the number of cases is increasing, the mortality is increasing, and it's going to stay for next 2 to 3 months. So this is the projection for COVID-19 in case of Pakistan. If you've got any questions or comments, you can write it down in the comment section below. If you want to ask me something, you can drop me a question in the comment section below, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. So thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.